Tonight we're looking at a project of immense scale and consequence. It's a structure reshaping a continent's relationship with its most vital waterway. We're talking about the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or the GERD. This massive concrete behemoth sits on the Blue Nile River in the Benishangul Gumuz region of Ethiopia. The Blue Nile is a crucial tributary. It provides the majority of the water that flows into the main Nile River downstream. The dam itself is an engineering marvel. It stands over 145 meters tall and stretches more than 1.7 kilometers long. But it was in 2011 that the vision started to become a concrete reality. That's when the Ethiopian government officially launched the project. The timing was significant. It came during a period of political and social change across North Africa and the Middle East. For Ethiopia, this moment represented a turning point, asserting its sovereignty over the waters flowing from its highlands. The construction process has involved thousands of workers, engineers, and technicians working in a remote part of the country. Every phase has been watched closely by its neighbors and by world powers. As of today, the dam is largely complete and has been generating electricity for some time. But its full operational capacity and long-term rules are still subjects of intense debate. It is about changing the flow of power, both electrical and political, in one of the most water-scarce regions on the planet. The GERD is a reality on the ground, but its final chapter is still being written, day by day, negotiation by negotiation. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is how it was paid for. In an era where mega-projects often rely on international loans from institutions like the World Bank or foreign governments, Ethiopia chose a different path. The government launched a massive national fundraising campaign, calling on its own citizens at home and living abroad to finance the dam's construction. The response from the Ethiopian public was extraordinary. People from all walks of life contributed. Civil servants pledged a portion of their monthly salaries. Business owners made significant donations. Ethiopians living overseas sent money back home, eager to be a part of this historic undertaking. The government issued bonds specifically for the dam. The bonds became a popular investment and a symbol of patriotism. This funding fostered deep ownership and national pride. The GERD became intertwined with Ethiopian identity and hopes for a more prosperous future. By avoiding major foreign loans, Ethiopia maintained autonomy over design and implementation. External creditors could not impose conditions. This financial independence has given Ethiopian negotiators a stronger hand in talks with Egypt and Sudan. They can argue the dam is a sovereign project paid for with the sweat and savings of their own people. For Ethiopia, the GERD represents a new era, a renaissance as its name suggests. It is a declaration of taking control of its own destiny. This deep investment explains why the government's stance is so firm. It is not just defending infrastructure, it is defending a national dream that millions of its citizens paid to build. At its core, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is a colossal power plant. Its primary purpose is to generate electricity, a staggering amount of it, enough to fundamentally reshape the nation's energy landscape. Once its 13 turbines are fully operational, the dam is designed to have an installed capacity of 5.15 gigawatts. This monumental output will more than double Ethiopia's entire electricity generation capacity, catapulting it into a new era of energy abundance. To put that number in perspective, over 60% of Ethiopians, a population exceeding 70 million people, still lack reliable access to electricity. For these tens of millions, daily life is dictated by the rising and setting of the sun. The GERD promises to change that reality for an entire nation. This massive jump in power is seen as the key to unlocking Ethiopia's economic potential. Access to electricity will allow schools to operate, longer hospitals to power essential medical equipment, small businesses to flourish. It will enable the creation of new industries and manufacturing hubs currently unfeasible due to energy shortages. For ordinary Ethiopians, it means light to study by at night, refrigeration to keep food fresh, the ability to connect to the digital world. The government sees electrification as a prerequisite for lifting millions out of poverty. The economic ripple effects could be immense. A reliable grid will attract foreign investment. Companies can operate without disruption. It will reduce reliance on imported fuels, freeing up foreign currency for other critical needs. The dam's construction and operation have already created thousands of jobs. Cheap, abundant electricity is central to Ethiopia's development strategy. It's meant to drive the transition to a middle-income economy. For years, Ethiopia has been one of Africa's fastest-growing economies, yet its progress has been consistently constrained by a critical infrastructure deficit, particularly in energy. The GERD is the government's flagship solution to this very problem. It is expected to not only create immediate opportunities and improve living standards, but also to provide a stable, electrified foundation for the future of Ethiopia's young and growing population of over 120 million people, powering their aspirations for generations to come. Ethiopia's vision for the GERD extends far beyond its own borders. The plan is not just to satisfy domestic energy needs but to become a major power exporter. Think of it as an energy powerhouse for East Africa: Kenya, Sudan, Djibouti, South Sudan. They represent a ready market for the surplus energy the GERD will generate. Ethiopia has already been laying the groundwork, building transmission lines, signing preliminary agreements to sell electricity, positioning itself as a key player in a new regional energy grid. This ambition has significant economic implications. Selling electricity would create a substantial new revenue stream. That income could pay off dam costs, fund other infrastructure projects, and bolster foreign exchange reserves. In essence, water from the Blue Nile becomes a valuable export commodity. Electricity. The strategy aims to diversify Ethiopia's economy away from agriculture, making it less vulnerable to commodity and weather shocks. Beyond economics, Ethiopia sees energy exports as a tool for regional integration and diplomacy. Supplying neighbors with affordable electricity could foster interdependence and stronger political ties. The GERD could be a catalyst for a more interconnected Horn of Africa, with Ethiopia at its center. However, this export plan worries downstream Egypt and Sudan, who fear Ethiopia's push for maximum revenue could affect water releases, especially during dry years. At the heart of the GERD project is its massive reservoir. When completely full, it holds approximately 74 billion cubic meters of water. This colossal volume is a testament to the project's ambition. To give you a sense of scale, that volume is more than the entire annual flow of the Blue Nile. The reservoir creates a significant new geographical feature, covering around 1,874 square kilometers. This vast artificial lake, visible from space, has fundamentally reshaped the local landscape, submerging forests and farmland to create a new coastline in the Ethiopian highlands. This reservoir is the dam's battery. It stores water that will be released through turbines, generating steady electricity throughout the year. The process of filling this enormous basin is where much of the international controversy lies. You can't fill a reservoir without holding back water. Ethiopia began filling in stages starting in 2020, coinciding with the rainy season to minimize immediate impact. 1. For Egypt and Sudan, this filling process is a source of profound anxiety. Egypt is almost entirely dependent on the Nile for fresh water. Cairo's primary fear is that a rapid fill during a multi-year drought could drastically reduce water reaching its own strategic reservoir, Lake Nasser, jeopardizing the water source for its entire population. That could threaten drinking water supplies for over 100 million people and devastate Egypt's agricultural sector. Sudan finds itself in a complex position. While it shares Egypt's concerns about water flow, especially for its own dams like the Rosaire, which sits just 100 kilometers downstream, it also stands to benefit from the GERD's potential for flood control. This dual reality creates a more nuanced diplomatic stance. Ethiopia says it has no intention of harming downstream neighbors. Ethiopian leaders argue the dam will provide benefits, regulating the flow of the river, preventing devastating floods in Sudan, trapping silt that clogs up Sudanese dams. However, the core dispute remains the lack of a legally binding agreement. Years of negotiations have failed to produce a consensus on rules for filling and operating the dam, particularly during prolonged droughts. Without such an agreement, Egypt and Sudan feel their water security is subject to unilateral Ethiopian decisions. They consider that an existential threat. The high stakes have led to years of intense, often stalled, diplomatic negotiations. Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan have been locked in a complex and frequently acrimonious trilateral dialogue. These talks, often mediated by international bodies like the African Union, the United States, and the European Union, have seen moments of hope quickly followed by deadlock. Despite countless meetings and high-level summits, a final comprehensive deal remains elusive, snagged on fundamental disagreements over drought mitigation and legally binding dispute resolution mechanisms. Egypt's position is rooted in what it calls its historic rights to the Nile's water, referencing colonial-era treaties from 1929 and 1959 which granted it a majority share. Cairo insists on a detailed, legally binding agreement with specific rules for dam operation, particularly during prolonged droughts. It wants clear guarantees on minimum water volumes released downstream each year. For a nation of over 100 million people in an arid landscape, anything less is viewed as an existential threat. Ethiopia, however, flatly rejects the colonial-era treaties as unfair and outdated, arguing they were signed without its participation and ignore the rights of upstream nations. Addis Ababa champions the principle of equitable use and maintains its sovereign right to use resources within its territory for development. It has been reluctant to commit to rigid agreements, arguing it needs operational flexibility to manage the dam effectively, adapt to rainfall variability, and respond to changing conditions. Ethiopia has offered to share data and coordinate operations but resists what it sees as attempts by downstream countries to control the dam's function. As of today, the situation remains a tense stalemate. The dam is built, the reservoir has filled in stages, electricity is being generated, yet the fundamental disagreement over long-term operation rules persists. The gap between Egypt and Ethiopia remains wide. The hope is that a path toward regional cooperation can still be found, allowing Ethiopia to achieve its development goals, while providing necessary assurances to Egypt and Sudan about their water security. The future of the Nile and the stability of the region hangs in this delicate balance.